Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I used to think our family was untouchable, a shining example of what everyone wanted but few could have. My father, Matthew, seemed to be the embodiment of stability. Every morning he'd glide down the stairs in his crisp, tailored suit, briefcase in hand, giving my mother a quick kiss on the cheek before heading out. My mother, Irene, was a constant presence, warm, bustling, and always in control. I thrived in the predictability of it all, but it was the little changes that began to unsettle me, and it started with my father. It wasn't anything obvious, not at first. He still left for work at the same time, still came home smelling faintly of aftershave and coffee, yet he'd linger in the doorway a moment longer, his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something. One evening, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, he walked in and stood there, just looking at me. "You've grown up so fast," he said softly, his tone almost wistful. "I hardly recognized you." I glanced up, confused by the comment. "I'm still the same, Dad." He chuckled, but it was a low, unfamiliar sound. "No, you're different." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. I didn't know what to make of it, so I just nodded and went back to my phone, pretending I hadn't noticed how closely he was watching me. Things only got more confusing from there. He began asking more questions, personal ones, about my day, my friends, whether I had a boyfriend. They were the kinds of questions most parents might ask, but there was something in the way he asked them that made my skin prickle, like he was probing for a deeper answer. One afternoon, he came home early and found me in the kitchen. "Hey, Peggy," he said, his voice lighter than usual. "I thought we could have some father-daughter time. How about we take a drive? Get some ice cream?" I hesitated. It was rare for him to come home before dinner, let alone suggest a spontaneous outing. "I don't know, I have homework." "It can wait," he interrupted, his smile widening. "Come on, when's the last time we did something just the two of us?" I felt a strange tug in my chest. I wanted to say yes because it felt normal, like a throwback to simpler times when he'd take me to the park on Sundays. But something held me back, a small voice telling me that this wasn't the same. "Maybe another time," I said, forcing a smile. "I really do have a lot of homework." For a moment, his face faltered and I thought he might insist. But then he just nodded, the smile fading from his lips. "All right," he said quietly, turning away. "Another time." As I watched him walk out of the kitchen, I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe he just wanted to reconnect, and I was pushing him away. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing, and I wasn't sure I liked where it was headed. The next day, I mentioned it to my mother, trying to sound casual. "Dad's been acting a little weird lately, hasn't he?" She glanced at me over her coffee mug, her eyebrows knitting together. "Weird how?" "I don't know," I shrugged, hoping to keep my voice light. "Just, like, paying more attention, asking more questions." My mother didn't answer right away. She stared into her mug, swirling the contents around. "Your father works hard," she said finally, her tone even. "Maybe he's just trying to make up for lost time." "Yeah, maybe," I murmured, but the explanation didn't sit right. I could see it in her eyes, she didn't believe it either. The illusion of perfection had started to crack, and I wasn't sure how much longer it would hold. The days that followed were a strange blur of routine and discomfort, like walking through a familiar place in the dark. My father's behavior hadn't changed much, but I started noticing the subtle things. He would find excuses to be around me more, offering to drive me to school or pick me up after. Small gestures that seemed harmless, but when they started happening more often, they felt like tiny weights pressing down on my chest. One afternoon, I was in my room, sketching idly by the window, when I heard a knock on the door. Before I could answer, it opened, and my father stepped inside. He stood there for a moment, taking in the room like he hadn't seen it 1,000 times before. "Hey, Peggy," he said, smiling, but his eyes didn't quite match the expression. "I was thinking we could watch a movie tonight, just the two of us." My pencil paused mid-stroke. I've got a lot of studying to do, Dad. Maybe later." His smile faltered. "You're always studying," he said, a hint of something sharper slipping into his tone. "I just want to spend some time with my daughter." "Is that so bad?" I glanced up, surprised by his sudden intensity. "No, it's not bad, I have exams coming up, you know. Right, he said, his voice softening again. Of course, I didn't mean to push. He left, closing the door quietly behind him, but I sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where he'd stood. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he looked at me, like he was expecting something. I didn't know what, but it left me feeling uneasy, as if there was a conversation happening that I wasn't part of. Later that evening, my mother called me into the living room. She was on the couch, her eyes fixed on the TV, but I could tell she wasn't really watching it. Is everything all right with you and your dad? She asked, her tone casual, but her eyes darted to mine for a fraction of a second too long. Yeah, why? I said, trying to sound casual too. He's been around a lot more lately, I guess. She pressed her lips together, a slight crease forming between her brows. He mentioned you seemed distant. Are you? I don't know, I said, feeling suddenly defensive. He's just different. It feels weird. She turned off the TV, finally giving me her full attention. Different how, Peggy? I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. I don't know, Mom. It's like he's trying too hard. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't say anything for a moment. Your father's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe he's just trying to reconnect. Maybe, I echoed, but I could tell she wasn't convinced either. The tension in the house grew thicker over the next few days. My father kept up his attempts, asking about my day, offering to cook dinner, even suggesting we go on a weekend trip, just the two of us. I kept my answers short, always finding excuses to avoid it, and I could feel his patience wearing thin, the way a thread stretches before it snaps. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my room. It was late, past midnight, and the house was silent except for that soft, rhythmic padding. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped just outside my door, and I could see a shadow shifting beneath the crack of light. I waited, my heart pounding, until finally the footsteps retreated and the shadow disappeared. I didn't sleep much after that. Whatever comfort I once had in our perfect little family was gone, replaced by a creeping sense of dread I couldn't shake. And for the first time, I wondered if I was the one imagining things, or if something was seriously wrong. The next few days passed in a suffocating blur. I found myself on edge, flinching at every unexpected sound, every casual glance from my father that lingered a beat too long. My mom had noticed the change too. She began watching us closely, like she was searching for something just out of reach. One evening, I was helping set the table for dinner when I caught her staring at me. Her gaze was sharp, cutting through the air between us, and I felt my pulse quicken. Peggy, she said, her voice calm but firm. Is there something you're not telling me? The question hung there, heavy and dangerous. No. Why would you ask that? I managed, but my hands trembled as I placed the last fork down. She didn't look convinced. Your father's been acting different, don't you think? And you seem distant. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, my father entered the room, his presence filling the space. Everything all right? He asked, his eyes flicking between us. Just talking, my mom replied, her tone shifting to something neutral, but I could see her jaw tighten. Dinner was an uncomfortable affair. My father tried to fill the silence with small talk, but it felt forced, like he was following a script. Every time I glanced at my mom, she was watching him, her eyes sharp and calculating, as if she was trying to piece together a puzzle. I could see her suspicion growing, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it spilled over. After dinner, I went to my room, hoping to escape the tension. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard my mom's voice, low but intense, coming from the kitchen. I couldn't help but stop and listen. What's going on with you, Tom? She demanded. I'm not blind. You've been hovering around Peggy more than usual, and it's starting to feel off. There was a pause, and then my father's voice, softer but with an edge to it. What are you implying, Anne? She's my daughter. I'm just trying to spend time with her. Is that all it is? My mother shot back. Because it feels like there's something more. Something you're not telling me. I felt my breath catch, my heart hammering in my chest. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break. I crept back down a few steps, straining to hear. But their voices lowered, and I could only catch fragments. Paranoid, nothing wrong. Overreacting. Doesn't make sense. Trust. Tell me the truth. I didn't wait to hear more. I rushed back to my room, my mind spinning. I wanted to believe it was all just a misunderstanding, that my mom was seeing things that weren't there. But deep down, I knew she wasn't wrong. Something was off, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it kept creeping back in, gnawing at me. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a tangled mess. I could still hear their voices, echoing in my head, each word laced with suspicion and unspoken fears. And for the first time, I wondered if this wasn't just about me. Maybe my parents were hiding something from each other, something darker than I could understand. As I drifted into a restless sleep, one thought lingered, a dark and unsettling question. What would happen if the truth came out? I knew something was coming. It was like the air in the house had thickened, making it hard to breathe. My mom barely spoke during breakfast, her eyes fixed on her coffee cup, her fingers tapping against the table in a steady, nervous rhythm. My dad, on the other hand, acted as if everything was perfectly normal, humming softly as he buttered his toast. The contrast was unsettling, like watching two actors in entirely different scenes. Later that afternoon, I was in my room when I heard a crash from downstairs, a glass shattering. I rushed down, my heart pounding, to find my mom standing in the kitchen, shards of a broken mug scattered around her feet. My dad was across the room, his face flushed with a mix of anger and something I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe. What's going on? I asked, my voice barely steady. Nothing, my dad said quickly, too quickly, stepping forward. It was just an accident. My mom's eyes flicked to me, and I saw something raw there, a plea hidden beneath the surface. No, it wasn't, she said, her voice cold. Tom, we need to talk about this. Now. Anne, not in front of Peggy, he warned, his tone low and sharp. No, she snapped, and her voice rose, shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. I'm done pretending everything is fine. I'm done acting like I don't see what's happening. I stood frozen, feeling like I was intruding on something private, something I wasn't meant to hear. But I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. What are you talking about? My father's voice was calm, but his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You've been different, she said, her words rushing out, almost tripping over each other. And not just with me. With Peggy. I see how you watch her, how you hover around her. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not blind, Tom. I see it. My father's face darkened, and he took a step toward her. You're being ridiculous, Anne. You're letting your imagination run wild. Am I? She picked up a crumpled piece of paper from the counter and threw it at him. Then explain this. I watched as he unfolded the note, his eyes scanning the words. Whatever it was, it hit him hard. I saw the color drain from his face, his jaw tightening, but he quickly composed himself, crumpling the paper in his fist. It's nothing, he said, but his voice wavered. Just a misunderstanding. No, Tom. This is more than that, she said, her voice softer now but no less intense. If you don't tell me the truth, I will find out myself. I felt like I was drowning, the room spinning around me. I didn't know what the note said, but I could see it was the trigger, the thing that had finally shattered the fragile peace in our house. And as I stood there caught between them, I realized that this was just the beginning. The truth, whatever it was, had been lurking beneath the surface for too long, and now it was about to break free. My mother stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't do this, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can't stay here, not like this. Then she went upstairs, packed her things in her suitcase and left, slamming the front door, leaving my father and me in suffocating silence. The house was suffocatingly quiet. Since Mom left, it felt like the walls were closing in, pressing against me, forcing me to confront everything I didn't want to face. I kept replaying our last conversation over and over, but it was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring blankly out the window. 2 days had passed, yet it felt like I'd been stuck in this moment for weeks. I heard Dad's footsteps behind me, hesitant and slow, as if he wasn't sure whether he should come closer. But then he did, stopping just a few feet away, and I felt his presence like a weight on my chest. Peggy, he said quietly, almost like he was afraid to disturb the air between us. We need to talk. I turned to face him, bracing myself. What's there to talk about, Dad? She's gone, because of us. He shook his head. letting out a bitter laugh that sent a chill down my spine. No, she left because of her own suspicions. She couldn't believe. She had every reason to be suspicious. I blurted out, louder than I intended. You were acting strange, and so was I. The words felt like they were ripping out of me, and I half expected him to walk away, to turn his back on me just like Mom had. But he didn't. He took a step closer, and I could see a flicker of something in his eyes, fear, maybe, or confusion. I never did anything wrong, he said softly. I was just trying to protect you. Protect me? I could barely keep my voice steady. From what? Yourself. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I felt like I was drowning in it. I had to say something, even if it made everything worse. Mom kept thinking there was something inappropriate between us. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't like that. I didn't want to lose you. Dad's face softened, but there was a look of confusion in his eyes, like he was trying to understand a language he'd never heard before. Peggy, what are you saying? I could feel the tears welling up, but I forced myself to keep going. Let everyone judge me, but I fell in love with you, not as my father, but as someone I trusted, admired. I thought, if I could be closer to you, maybe I could keep you with me. I looked away, feeling my cheeks burn with shame. But I see now that I was wrong. It wasn't love. It was just a desperate attempt to hold on to something that was slipping away. He stared at me, and I could see the shock wash over his face, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find the words. I'm sorry, Peggy, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't know. I didn't realize how much this was hurting you. I thought I was doing the right thing. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What's done is done. We've already lost her. We've already lost everything. I waited for him to say something, to deny it, to tell me I was wrong. But he just stood there, and the silence stretched on, swallowing the last remnants of the family we used to be. I went up to him and hugged him with my whole body. Dad kissed me tenderly, and I answered him. Time passed. I grew older, and at one point I seduced him. From that moment on, we began to live with him as man and woman in great love.